In April 2026, the Secretary of the Navy stood in front of reporters and said something that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. He announced that the United States was reviewing whether its next two aircraft carriers still made sense, whether the design, the systems, and above all the cost of the most powerful warships ever built could still be justified. The following day, he was removed from office. The ships in question are CVN-82 and CVN-83, already named for two American presidents, not yet under contract, not yet a single sheet of steel cut, and the question hanging over them is one that now divides the entire American defense establishment. In an age of cheap drones, hypersonic missiles, and satellites that can see anything on the open ocean, is the $13 billion supercarrier still the ultimate instrument of national power? Or is it the most expensive target in human history? A floating monument to a kind of war that no longer exists. This is the story of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the fleet that comes after her, and the argument that will decide the shape of American sea power for the next 50 years. Start with what the Ford actually is, because the scale's genuinely difficult to hold in your head. She displaces roughly 100,000 tons. She's over 1,000 feet long. Two nuclear reactors give her a range measured not in miles, but in decades. She can steam for 20-plus years without refueling. She carries an air wing of up to 75 aircraft and can move 500 miles in a day. She's not merely a ship, she's a piece of sovereign American territory that floats, capable of putting combat air power over a crisis anywhere on Earth without asking a single foreign government for permission to use its runways. That's the entire argument for the carrier distilled. No host nation, no negotiation, no fixed base an enemy can target, and the Ford is a genuine technological leap over the Nimitz-class ship she replaces. Her A-1B reactors generate at least 25% more power, and the electricity available to the ship has been roughly tripled. A deliberate choice made decades ago to feed the energy-hungry weapons of the future. Steam catapults were replaced with the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, which accelerates aircraft more smoothly, stresses airframes less, and pushes sortie rates higher. Advanced arresting gear brings them home. Hundreds fewer sailors are required to run her. On paper, everything about the Ford points forward. And in 2026, she proved it in combat. During Operation Epic Fury, the campaign against Iran, the Ford deployed from the Caribbean all the way to the Middle East on one of the longest carrier deployments in modern American history. Navy officials previewing the results told reporters the sortie rate would be, their word, eye-watering. From a single hull, the United States held an entire region at risk for weeks. Her crew came home to a presidential unit citation. By the oldest measure of a warship, she did exactly what she was built to do. So why is the Navy questioning her successors? Because the threat environment has changed more in 15 years than in the previous 50. China has built an entire strategy, anti-access, area denial, designed for one purpose: to hold American carrier strike groups at risk so far from Chinese shores that they become irrelevant. The centerpiece is a family of anti-ship ballistic missiles nicknamed carrier killers, the DF-21D and the longer-ranged DF-26, backed by hypersonic glide vehicles that maneuver unpredictably at extreme speed, and an expanding satellite and sensor network built to find, fix, and track a moving ship across thousands of miles of ocean. And beneath that sits the cheaper, uglier problem, the one Ukraine taught the world. A country with essentially no navy drove a major fleet out of large parts of the Black Sea using explosive drone boats, underwater drones, and aerial drones, costing a tiny fraction of the warships they destroyed. The arithmetic is brutal. A single defensive interceptor missile can cost hundreds of thousands or even $1 million. The drone it kills might cost a few thousand. You can win every single engagement and still lose, because your launch cells are finite and the enemy's factory is not. That's the case for the prosecution, and it's serious. But the defense has an answer, and it starts with a distinction that matters enormously. Vulnerability is not the same thing as obsolescence. The comparison critics love that the carrier is the new battleship is emotionally satisfying and historically wrong. Battleships were built around fixed line-of-sight firepower welded into the hull. When aircraft outranged their guns, there was no way to reinvent them. A carrier's different. Its power isn't in the ship, it's in what the ship launches, which means the carrier evolves simply by changing what lands on its deck. A Nimitz-class hull designed in the 1960s today operates stealth fighters, airborne early warning aircraft, and advanced electronic attack jets that nobody imagined when the ship was drawn. That adaptability is the whole point. And it's the reason China itself, the country supposedly making carriers obsolete, is building more of them, operating 3 today with plans for 6 by the 2030s and as many as 9 by 2035. Nations don't spend that kind of money on a dead concept, and the adaptation's happening right now in ways that go far beyond new aircraft. The single biggest fix for the missile problem is distance. If the enemy's missiles outrange your air wing, extend your air wing. That's precisely what the MQ-25A Stingray is for, an unmanned carrier-based refueling drone that made its first test flight in April 2026, designed to dramatically extend the combat radius of every fighter on the deck. Without risking a large non-stealthy man tanker, the carrier can strike from hundreds of miles farther out, operating from standoff ranges beyond the reach of Chinese and Iranian missiles. Behind it comes the FA-XX, a next-generation carrier fighter built around extended range, advanced stealth, and integration with unmanned systems. And then there's the answer to the drone swarm economics, which arrived in dramatic fashion in October 2025 when a high-energy laser was fired from the flight deck of an American aircraft carrier for the first time in history. A containerized system called Locust was rolled onto the deck of the USS George H.W. Bush and, in a single live-fire sequence, detected, tracked, and destroyed a swarm of drones. The significance isn't the laser's raw power, it's the economics. A laser shot costs a few dollars. Its magazine is effectively bottomless, limited only by electrical power and cooling. And a nuclear-powered carrier has more spare electricity than any other vessel afloat. This is exactly why the Ford's designers tripled her electrical output 20 years ago. On her escorting destroyers, the Navy already fields Helios, a 60-kilowatt integrated laser, and Odin, a dazzler that blinds drone optics without firing a shot, both present in the task forces operating against Iran. The counter-swarm answer is arriving. But none of that solves the deepest problem, which isn't technological at all. It's industrial and financial. The Ford cost roughly $13 billion. Her sister ships have climbed higher, the Kennedy near $13.2 billion, the Enterprise over $14, the Doris Miller over $15. And they keep slipping. The Kennedy is run so far behind that the Navy was forced to extend the legendary USS Nimitz service life into 2027 just to avoid a gap in the fleet. A single Ford-class hull now takes the better part of a decade to build at a shipyard competing for the same welders, engineers, and suppliers as the submarine programs, which brings us back to that April announcement. The review of CVN-82 and CVN-83, examining in the Navy's own stated language how to increase lethality and survivability while simplifying the design and potentially reducing cost. Because the pressure's enormous. The same budget must fund submarines, destroyers, logistic ships, unmanned vessels, and an expanding fleet all at once. And yet, read the actual money, not the headlines. In the 2027 budget, the carrier program receives roughly $4 billion, with over $22 billion programmed through 2031, including advanced procurement for both future ships. CVN-82's purchase was actually accelerated by a full year, pulled forward from 2030 to 2029, so the Navy questioned the carrier and then funded it faster. That contradiction's the real story of 2026. So where does this leave us? Not with a clean answer, but with a genuine shift in what the carrier is for. The era of the uncontested carrier, the era when a strike group could park off any coast and operate with impunity, is finished. And no serious officer disputes it. What replaces it is something more distributed. The carrier is a mobile hub for long-range unmanned aircraft and standoff missiles, defended by lasers drawing on reactor power, screened by submarines and robotic sensors, striking from far beyond the enemy's reach rather than sailing into it. Even the carrier's own defenders now argue the Navy's real mistake is treating the supercarrier as the whole fleet, that submarines, land-based bombers, unmanned systems, marine missile units, and allied air bases should carry more of the load, so that $13 billion and 5,000 American lives are never the single point of failure in a war plan. The carrier isn't disappearing. It's being demoted from the center of everything to one node among many, and simultaneously upgraded into something stranger than it's ever been, a floating power station projecting energy in every sense of the word. 250 years into the American experiment, the country still builds the largest warships on Earth, and still can't fully agree on why. The Ford came home from the Persian Gulf a proven weapon of war. Her successors sit unbuilt, under review, defended, and doubted in the same breath by the same institution. And the honest answer to the question we started with is uncomfortable for both camps. The supercarrier is not obsolete, but for the first time since 1945, it's no longer unquestionable. And the nation that built its entire concept of power projection around these ships is quietly, expensively hedging its bet. What do you think? Is the carrier still the backbone of American power, or a magnificent relic we haven't admitted to losing yet? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.